What is up, YouTube, and welcome to my no compromised Impulse RC Apex build. I did a lot of research, I took a lot of time, and I studied, and I wanted to get the best of the best quality, everything that I could possibly put into this build. And for you impatient people that have clicked on this video because the title says something about most expensive 5-inch freestyle quad or whatever, it may not be, but for me it is. But we're just going to cut right to the chase. We're going to get you guys out of the way and get you on with your day. So you're here to find out what's so expensive about this build. It's basically, it's in the hardware. We have all titanium hardware in this build. For instance, the bolts that hold the motors on here, they are a M3 by 10 cap head screw, grade 5 titanium. Now that's not like any other, like you can go on eBay and you can go wherever and you're gonna find, you know, these screws or whatever, but to find grade 5, which is, from what I understand, is the highest grade of titanium that you can get. These bolts, you can find them on monsterbolt.com. They are $3.07 each, just for the cap head screws that I'm holding the motors on with. And all of those, it takes 16 of them to hold your motors on, and that's about 50 bucks just in hardware to hold your motors on. That's not including all the countersunk screws, top and bottom, with the aluminum countersunk washers that's on there. But anyway, on your way out, be sure to hit the like button, and we'll see you guys in the next one. But for the rest of you folks that want to stick around and hear me ramble and talk about this, what I would like to do in this video is I'm going to try to be as detailed as I possibly can. And this is not like it's not like a how-to video. It's like how I go about building some of this. Hopefully you guys will like figure out some tricks, some things that you never thought of. I don't know. I've thoroughly thought this build out. I used the Apex last year a little bit, mixed in with my TAC edition, and I really like it. I really liked how it flies. So first I'm going to go ahead and get the top plate took off of this thing, and we're gonna look at, do a little breakdown of what's in here and what kind of stuff we're working with here. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. So for FPV, I'm running the DJI Cadix Vista with the DJI camera on there. Got the Crossfire Nano, running the FETTech 4-in-1 45 amp ESC. Got the FETTech G4 on there, little buzzer, using the Mr. Steel 2345 kV motors. Not dead set on this antenna, but I got the Foxeer Lollipop on there. Definitely going to be trying out different FPV antennas for this setup, but everything else is pretty much the way it's going to be. So I'm going to be doing a build from scratch today. I'm just using this as like a reference or whatever. You know, I've already been through this. This one's ready to go. As you can see, I've got quite a bit of 3D printed parts on here. We will cover those along the way in the build. Just be sure to go down there and check your chapter thing, whatever you call that, where you can scroll. I don't know what you call it, but you should be able to mouse over the little dot and slide it, and words will come up in little pictures of what section of the video we're at this moment. Moving on. Okay, let's start out talking a little bit about the Apex frame and what is different about the other frames versus this frame that I've pretty much had to put together myself. So to start out with, this frame is the basic Apex frame, right? It's not the HD version. Let's cover real quick what may be some differences in the HD version. So this is the regular bottom plate, and this is the HD bottom plate here. A lot of people probably already know this, but I'm just going to cover it right quick. The difference between the regular Apex bottom plate and this is not really the bottom plate. This is called the back bottom plate or whatever, because the front bottom plate is this one, and it's the same on all of them. But what's different on the HD version is they made it a little bit bigger back here on the back to accept an air unit to fit in here. But the regular version has, I believe, the 20 by 20 holes that your Vista will just bolt right onto. So I like that. So we've got the standard bottom plate to hold the Vista versus the air unit, because I don't really want to use the air unit. And of course the top plate is a little different on the HD. The HD is over here, and it's wider, you know, to, like I said, to accept that air unit. But we're going to be using the regular top plate. Where the things that comes in a little weird is in these camera plates, right? So these are the HD camera plates, and what those do is they actually move the FPV camera slightly forward so you don't have the standoffs in your view when you're in the goggles or whatever. So you can do like a cleaner DVR that doesn't have standoffs in it. And I know a lot of people don't do this because I've seen your DVR, your goggle DVR, and you can see your standoffs. So I know that a lot of people don't realize that. Let me see if I can maybe demonstrate real quick. So you can kind of see how the bolt hole is slightly forward on the HD plate versus the regular plate. On my build, I'm going to be doing the HD plate. So it's basically, just a little recap, it's basically the standard Apex with HD plates. Yeah, really not going to get into actually like assembling the frame because there's plenty of videos out there on how to do that, but we're going to touch on some things that I like to do, and hopefully I can kind of explain those things to you guys along the way. So we're going to start out with some 10mm. I'm assuming these are 10mm. I think they are. Let me see here. Let's get out the micrometer here. 986. I'm pretty sure this is considered a 10mm. Everything in this build is titanium except for the bolts that holds the arms on. We're going with the factory bolts that holds the arms on because those are a hardened steel, and we definitely don't want a softer metal there. So I use an M3x10 screw to hold my flight controller on, and this is a very important. This is kind of some of the stuff that I'm trying to show you guys. So these are like a 2mm wide by 3mm nut. That's just a knurled nut. It's like a standoff spacer. You can get it on Pyro Drone or Race Day Quads or something like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 of those and put those on these screws. You'll see why we're using these here in a second. You know, I really don't know if I need to explain it ahead of time, but maybe you just kind of follow along and you'll understand, you know, when we get to that point, because I have tried every size bolt in here, different spacers, different ways of going about this, and I've got it down to this is the setup right here. I've literally sat here for weeks planning this build out, ordering things, trying things, and I think I've got something pretty cool that I wanted to share with you guys. Yeah, so I'm going to double up on the nuts for that. And then you hold those, give those a little tighten. Alright, so we got that done, and we've got our 2 spacers on there. It's gonna work out perfect. Trust me, you'll see here in just a moment. And like I said earlier, I'm not really gonna show you guys like how to assemble the frame because there's no sense in that. There's plenty of videos out there for that. Another quick little tip, if you're wondering how tight to get these, what you need to do is you need to get you a long Allen wrench, not a short one. Not a little short one like this, right? Get you a long Allen wrench. Here's a little tip, right? You're like, I wonder how tight these need to be. All right, so put your Allen wrench on there and tighten it up until you feel that Allen wrench flexing, and it's like your torque wrench. You'll know that that's tight enough. It's kind of hard to do with like the T-style or whatever, but with this type of Allen wrench right here, it's like a built-in torque wrench. You can see it flexing. That's when you know you got her tight enough. Tip of the day. Okay, so we got our bottom portion of the frame assembled there. Now what I would like to do is I'm going to move on to the way that I'm going to mount the Vista on here. So I hunted everywhere, and all I could come up with for these are stainless. I couldn't find 2mm countersunk 2mm by 20mm. Okay, so that's another thing that's kind of important. These need to be 20mm long. For these, I have pretty much a smaller version of the screws that we used for our flight controller stack. So these are 2mm anodized knurled nuts. So you're going to want to put one of those on these bolts and run it all the way down. And then I don't know what size Allen wrench this is. It's definitely smaller than what we normally use with our quads. I'm going to give that just a, I'm not going to go over tight because these are really small and easy to strip out, especially with the little aluminum hardware holding it on there and everything. But Yeah, give those a little tweak. So next step in this procedure is I got some of these little tiny O-rings right here. And I'm going to slip those O-rings down to those nuts. We're going to go ahead and put this on our little standoffs we've got built here. So a wise man would go ahead and wire up his Vista and have the plug ready to just plug it into the flight controller, but I never made it as a wise man. I never made it as a poor man. Alright, so we've got that on there. We've got our O-rings on the bottom, right? Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to put on another set of O-rings for the top. So you have a choice right here. So what I did on the other build is I used these nylon nuts right here, these M2 nylon nuts, versus using the thumb screws. That way I could use the nylon portion of the nut to tighten the, snug it down a little bit and not have to worry about the nuts coming loose. So we're going to do that. I'm just going to tighten these up just to where I don't want to squish my O-rings too much, but the nylon just barely gets into the threads of the bolt. Try not to squish my O-rings too bad. Now these, like I said earlier, these are 20mm screws. Some 22s would probably do a little bit better. That way you didn't really have to clamp down on it. But I've got it just flush with the top of the screws here. And my O-rings, they look like they're in pretty decent shape. So nothing really special about how to, mount the FPV camera on here. It's pretty standard. I'm going to put a little dab of Loctite on my screws before I put them in, because I don't want those things backing out. And I've lost a lot of the screws that holds my FPV camera in. So I'll pretty much use Loctite on everything. Blue Loctite, of course. Tip about Loctite, I'm going to take my little X-Acto blade here, and I'm going to actually put some in the camera holes. Just put a little dab in there, because once you run that screw through the TPU spacer that's in here, it's going to pretty much rub all that off. I'm going to put just a little bit down in there on the threads inside the camera. That way I know that there's some Loctite inside there. I'm also going to put some on the screws, but that's just to make sure I got some in there. So I'm doing some of this out of order than like I normally would, but I'm doing it this way, like kind of for the sake of the video, so I can kind of explain, what's different. You do not have to do any of these things for this. It's not going to change the flight characteristics of this quad at all. But I just, this is a hobby, a passion for a lot of you, and I just like nice stuff. But I did a lot of research on trying to find, I believe, hold on, let me measure these things. So the front standoffs are 28mm. And I looked everywhere, high and low. eBay, I really didn't want to order anything from China because I knew it would take forever and I wanted to get on with it. But turns out I started this whole process like 2 or 3 months ago and trying to gather up all this crap because I'm building 3 of these identical setups. And I'm going to have 1 analog setup. But I couldn't find any. I could find like red ones, right? But I couldn't find like the multiple colors, because this one's going to be blue. The last one you've seen was pink. I'm doing one that's purple, and then I'm doing one that's gold. So finding these standoffs that are hex. Now I could find 25mm standoffs that were not a hex, but I feel like the hex is important because it really helps hold your camera in there the way it's supposed to be. It's designed to have hex standoffs in there, so we're sticking with that. So back here on the back, we're going to be doing 20mm fancy knurled standoffs. Back here on these screws, I'm going to be using a M3 by 10 also the same ones I used to hold the stack. I'm going to be using those on the back ones to give it a little bit more support here on the back, because there's going to be some things mounted to that. And we will use M3x8 pretty much everywhere else except for the GoPro mount. And for these standoffs right here, I'm going to be using an M3x8. I'm going to use an M3x10 screw to hold these two standoffs behind the camera. And for the standoffs on the front, I'm going to be using a M3x12 on those, because those need to go through our little nose protector. Going to be using the Coyote brown, tan, or whatever parts for this build on this particular one. Okay, so we got all those in. I think I went with an M10 here, an M8 here, an M8 here, and an M12 here. I've just put those in there for now, just for the sake of the video or whatever. I'm going to remove all those screws later and Loctite just the bottom ones. I will not Loctite the top, because that's where you need to get it on and off. But most of the time, you don't really remove the screws on the bottom that much. All right, let's get out some of our TPU here, because this is where things kind of get cool. Yeah, so this little thing on the back here, this is where our VTX camera will be. Our Crossfire antenna will be mounted to that. Probably gonna take it on and off 100 times, but we're gonna go ahead and just slip that sucker on there for now. Get that pushed down on there. And then, because our camera is stuck out the front so far, we got us a little lens protector for the DJI camera. Let's go ahead and pop that sucker on there. Definitely a tight fit. And one of the coolest parts that I run across on Thingiverse. This may be not for the Apex, because I think there's like an AK-47 that's like the clone, and that's what this piece is for. So the top plate doesn't really fit that great for this, but it works for me, for what I'm wanting to do. But this thing is pretty cool, because your Crossfire receiver sits in there. It's a little hammock, and it's made perfectly where it fits like inside this little piece here, like where your board would normally fit if you had like the Mr. Steel version. So it goes up in those little slots, like so, and then you slip it down in there, and then it's got little grooves for your standoffs to go in there. And you got a holder down there, and you got to hold your tongue just right. Inside here is a perfect little place for my capacitor and the spike absorber. We'll get into that. Stick around in the video. We'll get to doing that. And then also, I printed a little thing that holds my little beeper. Printed a little holder for my beeper. Why is this not focused? Yeah, and then that will mount on this little standoff right here and hold our beeper in place. So that's pretty cool. So now I'm at the point where I'm just going to start having, it's time to start putting electronics in here. It's time to put in our ESC needs to go in and that kind of stuff. And I've got to do a live stream here pretty soon with a guy I'm supposed to be on there. He's invited me to be on his live stream. So I'm going to have to call it quits for today, and I'm not sure. I'm going to edit this video. We may be continuing or whatever, but I might just make this part one. We'll see when I edit it a little bit. I will come back tomorrow and work on it. So I don't know where we're at as far as that goes, but yeah, for now, signing off. See you guys in the next one. It's going to be coming. If I start another video, I don't know. I don't have that figured out yet. We'll see how long, what I can cut down, what I've already done, how long the video is going to be, edit that, and then we may pick right back up where I am. I don't know. I suck at these, but it is what it is. Yeah, surprise, it's a two-part video. I didn't want it to be, but after editing it, and it's 20 minutes long, and that was Saturday, and it's all the way around to Friday. Almost, tomorrow's gonna be Saturday again, and still I want to get this thing built, but I was using my cell phone as like the close-up camera. You can see my setup that I got here. This is I'm talking to this one. This is my overhead shot, and I had the cell phone, to get some close-ups, and I was really liking how that was going. But my cell phone, the hard drive or whatever got full on it, and the close-up shots, I couldn't, as you'll notice towards the end of the video, there's like no more close-up shots. And I've been kind of like pondering all week about just starting over and doing it again. But then when I sat and I was editing it, I was like, it's not that bad. So I decided to go ahead and edit it, and then I had full intentions of like continuing, but it's like 20 minutes long, so I thought we'd just break it up into 2 parts. I'm rambling. I couldn't stand it. The video was over, and I'm like, I didn't ramble enough. I've got to ramble some more. So anyway, I'm rambling to you guys to say, stick around for part 2. Tomorrow, I'm planning on filming the rest of the build, and we're going to get her done. So appreciate you guys. Appreciate it. Oh, 3,000 subscribers. How did I forget that? We've made it to 3,000 subscribers. I'm gonna come up with some kind of special for that or whatever. Let's get through this build video, and then we'll do some celebrating for the 3,000 subscribers. Thanks to each and every one of you. I'm glad that you're here, and yeah, here we go.